to the Erotic Realm podcast. I'm your host, Em, a psychosexuality nerd with a background in psychology and a 24/7 lifestyle kinkster. The following is a conversation with Marc, a bisexual man and hedonist with decades of experience in the kink world. Marc has lived through and contributed to the evolution of the kink community. In this episode, he shares his insights on how the scene has changed over the years, his journey with mental health as a bisexual man, and the lessons he's learned from a rich life in exploration and connection. I hope you enjoy this thought-provoking and intimate discussion, and if you do, please follow and rate the show so stories like Marc's can reach more people that may benefit from hearing it. Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor for today. Discover the Miss Fun BDSM set at Ozgaga, the ultimate collection to explore your desires. This premium set includes silky cuffs, a blindfold, a playful paddle, and more. Everything you need to ignite passion and connection, whether you're just starting or ready to level up. With Ozgaga, you can explore safely, discreetly, and with total confidence. Visit ozgaga.com.au today and let the adventure begin. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm, where science meets the stories of desire. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me Marc. Welcome, Marc.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm excited to chat with you. So let's begin by getting a feel for your erotic realm. How would you describe your sexuality?
To be honest, I don't like labels, but everybody seems to be hung up on labels in society. So, look, I'm probably bisexual, whatever that actually means nowadays. I'm equally attracted to both sexes. Sometimes not sexually, but I enjoy, if you like, the meeting of the minds as well. But even when I, if you like, first started in an alternative lifestyle many, many years ago, I just felt that being heterosexual wasn't for me. I thought there was a lot more out there in the world to experience, and I didn't feel that I didn't feel comfortable about limiting myself to one strain.
Yep, that's definitely something I can resonate with. Now, I know you don't like labels, but just to give us an idea of the kind of roles that you take on when you're being kinky, can you give us some ideas about what roles you've experienced in the kink world? You mentioned a couple in the form that I ask people to fill out before coming on the podcast. For example, hedonist, sir, switch, daddy, and mentor. Are they still roles that resonate with you?
Yes, they are. I find that I'm very comfortable more on the nurturing side of it, I suppose, now as I've got older. So I feel much more comfortable being with people that are still either starting the journey or still on the journey in no matter what they do. But funny enough, after 30-odd years in the scene, it's only been quite recently I felt comfortable enough to actually switch. For just a very few people. For me, I need that connection. I'm not very good at performative scenes, like at events or anything like that. I need to have a connection with someone to actually lean into it. So that could be as a daddy Domme, or it could be I'm being submissive. So
you mentioned that switching is a relatively new thing for you. I'm curious about the process of what happened leading up to that switch, because it sounds like you were on the more dominant side for most of the time. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I think what I found myself thinking, I'm one of these people that you always have to learn. So you either learn through your own actions or you learn through other people's. So I got to the stage where I thought, I've been a Dom for quite a few years. I'm a bit bored of it.
Okay.
I want to see what the other side is like, if that makes sense. So what I did was went through this process of basically putting my past experience as a Dom and observing and getting feedback from the submissives that I've had, and then putting myself in their place saying, well, how would they respond compared to how I would respond? So it was a bit of a slow process, but I've actually found that I really enjoyed it. I don't think I go into subspace. I don't think I'm there yet, but I certainly get, if you like, those warm fuzzies, and you get that urge then to please a person that's actually doming you. So for me, that's actually been refreshing. When I first started, I was, if I can give you some background of my past, I suppose, might
Please
put
do.
all this in context. So I'm closer to 60 now than I am to 50, so I've been around for quite a while. I lived in North Queensland when I was young, and I ran away from home at 15 to go and join a hippie commune.
Okay, interesting.
So, if you like, my first experience, I was quite young and impressionable, and I lived in a hippie commune for nearly 9 months. And it was a bit of an eye-opener. I actually came from quite a conservative family.
Okay.
But that opened my eyes to, hey, there's another side of people, basically. When I came home after 9 months, my father said to me, well, listen here, boy, you made an adult decision. You're an adult now, so you better work out what you're going to do with your life. So I joined the forces. So from one extreme to the other, I joined the Navy and was fortunate enough to travel extensively, free of charge. And I was still quite young. I think I was just turned 18, and I went for my first round world trip. And ended up being taken to a seedy alternative nightclub in Soho in England, in London. And I got introduced to Kink. And that was a gay fetish club. And I was a young, quite bronze tan, blonde, curly-headed, tall boy. And I was the most popular person there.
Fun. I said fun. So what year was this approximately?
Oh, that would have been back in about 1979, 1980.
Okay, it sounds like a fun time.
Yes, it was a fun time. And then I found out that, hey, I actually wanted to be more in charge than being a bottom, if that makes sense. So we were there for a couple of weeks. Pretty much every night I went back to this place, and it became more ingrained to me about my own sexuality and about kink and where I stood amongst it. Then we went to Europe, went to some amazing places in France and then in Germany. And that's where it was very raw. Again, it was all gay fetish clubs back then. It was very raw, very exciting. And I think I really learned how to, even though it was quite European and quite German, it was actually, I really learned there how you communicate and, sorry, how to communicate and about consent and the risk management side of it.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no. So after that experience, Fortunate enough to go to the States, to the east and west coast, and that was a little bit more, it was underground still, but a bit more overt, as you can imagine in some of those early sort of movies, and, with the little black berets on and the little caps and the leather vest and the butts hanging out of their leather pants and big handlebar moustaches. So I remember that it was quite amusing. Came back to Australia, of course, and it was Sydney. I came back to live in Sydney, and there was nothing. It was very much underground, and this is before the internet or mobile phones. So you had to go to certain pubs or clubs, and then after about 6 months, if you were lucky, someone would tap you on the shoulder and say, "Oh, would you be interested in coming to a private party this weekend?" And that's how I broke into the Australian scene. But the Australian scene back then was, oh my goodness, it was nowhere near what it was like overseas. It wasn't as sophisticated. I remember the first time I went to a private party, and it was a kink party, and all the doms were dressed in black, sitting down, and the subs were running around, laughing and joking, or laying at feet with their collars on. But no one talked.
Okay.
Like it was this sort of serious, stern sort of environment where I'd come from, where it was dynamic and there was people yelling and there was heaps of music. And so I went, there's got to be more to it than this. And then I was fortunate enough to break into a house and became a member of a house. And then I had a number of subs and different playmates.
But for those
I had a couple.
Sorry to interrupt, but for those who don't know, can you just describe what a house is? Because most people listening might be thinking that you broke into someone's house the way that you said it. So it'd be good for people to know.
So if you can imagine almost like a club. So a house would have been is set up by a group of like-minded people, and they start organising functions by invite only. And then usually they all have their own little ritual. So it's a bit like, the different football clubs. So people would align themselves to a certain house, and they would have their own rituals or emblems, whatever. So to be invited to one, to join one, you had to go. Oh, it's almost like the Freemasons, I remember we ended up having to go in, and we were dressed in black, and we had to, it was almost like a pledge of allegiance to the house to be accepted. And then once you got your credentials, well, then you could, you could progress to become a master, for instance. So back then, to become a master, you had to have a slave, like either a 24/7 or a constant contact with a person that served you. So I suppose from that period of time, it was like being collared. Nowadays people buy a collar off the shelf type thing and collar themselves. When I started, it was a lot more ritualistic than that. You wouldn't formally collar someone. It was like getting engaged, if you like. It was quite a serious matter, and you were seen to be in a full-time dynamic.
Can you give us an example of the collaring ritual that would happen back then?
Yeah, it's a while ago now, but it was basically that once you had a submissive or you had a dominant or master, and it got to the stage where you were pretty much exclusive to each other, and your dynamic was starting to get a little bit more serious than just casual, I suppose. I remember I was shown how to do a contract with myself,
Mm-hmm.
and then and that detailed basically roles and responsibilities for both of us and all that. And there was, if you like, a pledge to each other towards the end. And then the final part of that was actually gifting the collar.
Mm.
So whenever we were together, and if it was a scene or an event and all that, she would wear the appropriate collar. If we were out, perhaps just going out for dinner, it would actually be a more casual chain.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it was something that I bestowed on her.
So, was the only way to learn about BDSM and the community when you started from a mentor physically? There was no books. Obviously, there was no internet. Was this the only way that you could learn?
Yes. So, to learn it properly, it was one of those things that you join a house and then you would learn at the feet, if you like, from the more experienced and the senior people
Mm-hmm.
in the house. And it was more, and being crude, there was certain rituals that you would have to do. It was quite serious. Didn't mean you couldn't have fun, but it was structured that you would become as effective and as efficient as you could be.
And is that something that you wish there was more of in the current kink scenes?
I, see. This is what I look at now is that people I think, because information is so easy to get, and there's porn movies that actually give a whole wrong idea, and the Shades of Grey movie and movies, etc. It's given this sort of false image of what kink originally was. And I think nowadays it wouldn't hurt for some people to look at it a little bit more seriously, purely from the safety point of view, because there's so many casual operators that are in it for a short time. The scene is actually a little bit flooded now with especially young guys coming into the scene, because they don't, it's cheaper in their own mind than going through the other dating apps. So you get this sort of thing now where, she's submissive, so she's a slut and she'll do anything and she's desperate and all that, without realising and understanding, hey, it's a lot more deeper than that. The most exciting thing someone can have is the absolute trust from someone, that you will look after them and you'll nurture them and take them places where they've never been before. That's a lot of responsibility. And I would like to think that could come back into the scene a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But saying that, a few years ago, myself and a couple of other male doms tried to set up some workshops for mainly men who thought they were dominant or they wanted to take a lead or top in kink. And we were held down, we got very little support because it's a parochial society and men don't need to be trained how to do that to women. And it was like, well, no, we're trying to teach them to be responsible and respectful.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a look now in the scene, there are so many networks and workshops and supports for female dominance.
There sure is.
Where, I'd ask your listeners, name a couple of ones that male doms are involved in. They're very few and far in between, if you can find them. So what I always also see, because a lot of my friends are female doms, and my wife is a certified dom. So So, and that creates our own little thing in our household when you've got two doms living together. But anyway, um, what you find is that they have all their support groups and workshops, and they all talk to each other. You get a group of male doms, and they won't compare notes. They'll all try to alpha each other, or they ignore the others because don't look at my sub like that because they're afraid they're going to lose someone. It's a really bizarre. I would ask you to have a look if you ever see those groups, and you'll see the difference. It's quite interesting.
So, do you have any ideas of how to fix that issue? Or do you think if you put up the same idea for a workshop again, it would get no support currently? Do you think the attitude's changing around that?
Well, I think certainly with the Me Too movement and the greater awareness of abuse and all that, I think there's this automatic alert that goes on people's minds. Oh, a group of guys going to talk about this stuff. Oh, well, there you go. All you're doing is reinforcing abuse. Without understanding that that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is actually stop that behaviour and bring it back so everybody wins out of it. I think what would be successful if there were combined workshops. So you'd have your, female doms there, and you'd have a couple select male doms, and as a team, you talk about different behaviours and what it means, and guys, you've got to look at this. You want that person that you're with, your submissive, male or female, to respect you and want to make you happy because they want to make you happy, not because they're scared that you're going to actually hurt them. And that could be by actions or by words, So it'd be nice to look at some workshops where it's represented by both, I think.
That's a great idea, having female and male doms together in workshops. I don't think I've seen that happen, actually. So I really hope it does happen in the future. Thanks for sharing that. So as part of the podcast, I like to explore a quote around sexuality. And today I'd like to ask your viewpoint about a quote from Alfred Kinsey, who was, of course, one of the first American sexologists. And in 1947, he founded the Institute for Sex Research, which is now known as the Kinsey Institute for Research in Sex. So his quote is, "The only unnatural sexual act is that which you cannot perform." And I'm interested to see how this quote sits for you, since you've had so much experience in the kink and erotic realms. Does the quote resonate? Is any sexual act natural, in your opinion?
I think that they are. I think certainly the best sex, I think, happens between your ears than anything else. Your mind's a powerful thing. Your imagination is very powerful. So you can imagine yourself in certain different scenes, things being done to you or you doing to others. So all that can seem to be very natural, but there are restraints in the physical world which you might not, and it could be because of your health, it could be your size, it could be, it takes two to do this. So it could be your partner might not be comfortable with doing anything. So I think if you were to just look at the mind and do that side, anything is possible. You can put yourself into any sort of scene, and your fantasies take over, and sometimes that's actually better than the physical act. But when it comes to actually doing it with someone, it may not be that easy because there is still boundaries and taboos that we deal with because society's piled it on us ever since we were born.
100%.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I really do think that the mind is the biggest erotic muscle that we have, and thank goodness for fantasy. So thank you for highlighting that.
Yeah, sometimes the fantasies are much better than real life.
But anyway. Yes. Yeah, they're very important. So we've heard about your introduction to the kink world. Now we're speaking about fantasies. It's a good time for me to ask you about a peak sexual experience that you've had. So what comes to mind when I ask you, what's one of the best sexual experiences that you've had in your whole journey?
My whole journey. I think one happened quite a few years ago where it was one of those ones that there was sexual tension. There was a small group of us, and we started at a pub, and for some reason, I'm very much into energy, positive energy, and vibe. I love listening to people and looking and observing and all that. And the vibe was amazing. And within like an hour, and I think there was 7 of us, all 7 of us were on top of the world. Sexually, all of us were at our peak. So it was decided that we'd go back to a friend's flat, and we got back there, and we had a couple more drinks, and then we'll continue to flirt. And then I think it was me who just stood up and undressed and said, "Here I am. You've got 2 minutes to join me." And after that, it was a mix of kink and hedonism, and there was guy with guy and female with female, and then it was all in. But it was actually unexpected. It wasn't how we went out to start. Mm-hmm. You know, we were all friends, but we certainly weren't all sexual partners, you know. So I think that whole unexpected side of it was very powerful.
Yeah, it sounds like a really fun experience, and I can see why it's a peak sexual experience for you. So thank you for sharing. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times about identifying as bisexual when it comes to your sexuality. Have you always identified as a bisexual man, or did that begin when you first went over to the UK?
I think I thought I was quite hetero. I didn't, before I went to UK and went to the first club, I just thought, you know, I'm from North Queensland, bit of a country boy. Hey, it's man and woman, isn't it? You know, but again, it was the vibe. So there was only a couple of females. I remember it quite good. It was very dark, very smoky. Look, there was drugs being done. There was a whole range of stuff, if you can imagine back then. And this guy just caught my eye. And I just remember going, oh, my God, he is really hot. Mm-hmm. And then, thought, don't be silly. But he thought the same of me, and then he just came up and kissed me, and that was it. He just grabbed me by the back of the neck and just kissed me, and I went, wow, this is really, really a really powerful feeling. And from there, I thought, hey, I think I actually like this as much as I like the other. So, yeah, I think that's when he really hit home with me that I actually could enjoy both sexes.
Mm-hmm. So I recently came across an article that explores the unique position that bisexual men have in our society, and I'd love to ask your thoughts about it. So the title is Disclosure and Concealment of Sexual Orientation and the Mental Health of Non-Gay Identified but Behaviourally Bisexual Men. So the aim of the article was to explore why bisexual men report lower levels of mental health relative to gay men. This is a fact that not many people know, and there hasn't been a lot of research on this. So they collected data from 203 non-gay identified behaviourally bisexual men who do not disclose their same-sex behaviour to their female partners. And unsurprisingly, they found that greater concealment of their sexuality was associated with poorer mental health outcomes. And they found 2 factors contributed to this association between concealment and mental health. And these were internalised homophobia and general emotional support. And I'm wondering, Marc, do you find that these findings speak to your experience as a bisexual man or other bisexual men around you?
Yes, I think that's one of the real issues for bisexual men, and it's quite interesting. Most people get off with the thought of 2 women together.
Yeah.
Or watching 2 women together. And for a lot of people, the thought that 2 men might be together and do the same things is quite confronting and taboo, even today. Like, you know. So it's interesting. On one side, it's like, oh, we're all into watch that. And on the other side, nah, that's weird. No, not at all. And, of course, where does that leave a bisexual man? So, hey, I'm really popular if I'm with a woman, but if I'm with a man, it's not accepted. Like, you know, well, I'm living in between 2 worlds, aren't I? So I think not many people can live within 2 worlds, or in between 2 worlds. So I think what's interesting with that is that people still look at 2 men together. Now, saying that, there's a lot of, especially my female friends, who would pay dollars to watch me with another guy. Like, you know, for them, it's extremely exciting. Part of it is because it's taboo, but it's their peak erotic fantasy to see 2 guys. So we still don't recognise that bisexual men have got a place in the world. It's like no one really wants to own them. They fall through the cracks a little bit. It's one of those dirty little secrets. Well, I'm actually, you know, I like women too, so I'm bi, but they aren't going to admit that to anyone. And in fact, it's quite interesting in the kink scene with that, because you don't see many men, doms, that put on that they're bisexual gay.
True.
Right? So it's one of those sort of things. Maybe it's not because if you're bisexual or even gay, you're not manly enough to be dominant. I'm not too sure, but it's quite interesting where even today, to try and get help because a male is believes that he's bisexual or he's attracted to other males, it's actually harder to get support for him than if you're a part of the LGBTI community and you're gay. So, it's really because we sit in between 2 worlds.
Very well said, and let's hope that that stigma around bisexual men continues to change for the positive, and the best thing we can do is keep talking about it and keep sharing our viewpoints and getting bisexual men like you to talk about it. So thank you for sharing that. So, Marc, you describe yourself as a sensualist as well as a downright filthy fucker. Can you tell me more about the difference between the two and what these mean for you?
I think more the sensualist side for me is it's all about not necessarily the sex. It's about the ambience. It's about the connection that you have with the other person. It's setting that scene for the seduction, I think, for me. And I love watching my partner fall under that same spell. So it's I suppose it's very much a prelude of making love instead of just having sex.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in my other zone, which that, if you like, that filthy fucker zone, there's very little boundaries. It's very primal. Again, I reflect what my partner is putting out. So it then moves, if you like, from that soft seduction, gentle side to actually a lot more raw, a lot more primal. And that's when I really allow my imagination and encourage her imagination to run wild.
I love it. Those two sides really illustrate how complex and layered our erotic experiences can be. So I'm curious more about your relationships. You've mentioned that you're an ethical non-monogamist, you're polyamorous, and you're a relationship anarchist. I also understand that you're married. So can you share with us more about how that looks like for you?
I always, well, again, from my history, this is my second marriage. I've been married before, and I suppose I was living a pretty wild life when I was younger. I was travelling a fair bit. There was very little boundaries. I was only responsible to myself, really, at that time. And then, of course, you've got all this other sort of stuff put on you about, isn't it time you settle down, have a nice family, we want grandkids, that whole sort of very much mainstream societal expectations on a man and a woman. So I got married. And one of the issues in that marriage was my wife at the time was extremely jealous of my past experiences, as she had come from a very strict conservative family. So you had me, who was like reining it in to be the responsible husband and father of my children, and my partner at the time, my wife, was very much going, I've had enough of this conservatism and I want to experience what you had. So I think I found at that time, and we were together for quite a number of years and had two daughters, that I'm E&M, ethically non-monogamous. So that's about open and honest communication with your partner. That everything's above board. You don't cheat. You're as honest as you can be. Your communication is clear and concise, and so there's no surprises to anyone. So what happened is that she ended up cheating on me a number of times because she wanted experiences, and in the end, it was. I was looking after my daughters. They were quite young, and she was doing what she was doing. So in the end, it was like this isn't working for me anymore. So we split and divorced, and the girls stayed with me. So I raised two girls up through their being teenagers, the whole thing. Then for a couple of years, I just played the scene. I got heavily back into kink and into swinging and was really enjoying myself. I had no plans or ideas that I would go back into a permanent relationship. And of course, when you plan, when you're planning not to, it happens.
Yep.
And I met my current partner, and that was through the old alt.com site. So that's how we first connected, and there's quite a bit of age difference between us. And I was, if you like, kinky and fun, but she was looking to get married and have a family and white picket fence type stuff when she gets old enough to settle down. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, this is fun because she's extremely attractive and she's got that young, vibrant enthusiasm and curiosity. She identified as a submissive, but she was actually a masochist. And then I was travelling. I'd left the forces by then and was high up in a corporate ladder. And I was travelling extensively, and then we both realised pretty much at the same time. I was in America at the time, and she was back in Melbourne. That hey, actually, we miss each other a lot, and we've now been together for 19 years.
Congratulations!
But so it's only been in the last, I suppose, 5 or 6 years that my partner had started to evolve from being, if you like, a masochist or submissive, because she was confused that being a masochist meant she had to be submissive, which isn't true, by the way. So she said, hey, I want to try something else. So one of my subs that I had at the time, who was a male, I introduced them, and he gave a puppy dog eye looks, and she responded and said, you know what I'm going to do to you? And she hasn't looked back. So she's now a lifestyle dom. She's, she went and done the 7 Arts, is it? Remind me, Emma, I can't think of the title. And she's had several long-term subs.
I think you mean the 7 Realm Arts course with Anne Onomus? Yeah.
Yes, that's the one. See, you can get it done if you're a female, but you can't get it done if you're a male. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
There's
definitely.
an opening there for a bright young person to do, of course, if they can get it through the Hauser protest. But anyway.
Yes, it sounds like they'll have to put up with a lot, but it definitely needs to be done. I want to go back to quite a while ago you mentioned about what it's like having 2 doms living in a house together, and now we're talking about your wife. I'd love you to share more about that.
I think I said right at the start, I really don't do labels. So even though we're both dominant, our dynamic that we had together is unique to us. As a couple, we've been together for, nearly 19 years, and it's evolved through that. We don't try and now dom each other, for instance. We both enjoy a little bit of give and take, but there's certainly no conflict between us for whatever we have. And we also co-dom subs. So, and what's interesting about that, Em, is that we're non-verbal. So when my partner and I, we get into the zone, and there's certain rituals that we do, and I think this is interesting in itself, because sometimes it's very hard to go from, I've just got home from work, and then guess what, I'm going to go and see my sub. That transition for dom is not always that easy. You've got to put aside what's happened during the day. If you've had a bad day, for instance, you got to put it aside because you don't want to take that out on your submissive.
Mm-hmm.
So what my partner and I do, we have certain rituals. And this is how what we do. We change our wedding rings to black bands.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we change to a black wedding band on our left finger, and then I put one on my middle finger on my right hand. All right, and then we both wear a bracelet, and we have a pendant that we put around our necks. And by the time we finish that little ritual, Marc, the general manager of this company, moves from that role into my dominant role.
Mm.
So that's how we transition. But going back to your question about my partner and I, we don't try and out-dom each other, but when we are co-domming, to the lucky people that go through that, we don't have to talk. It's all non-verbal. We know exactly what we're doing. We just, because we've done that ritual, so we're both in that zone.
So
and
do you give each other looks? Is that how you're communicating? Or
yes,
is it? Yes,
looks. And we watch each other's, the way our bodies are reacting, where we put our hand. So that's come over, quite a few years of learning from each other. So I was mentoring my partner originally, and then I started to learn from her because the way she was doing things was slightly different how I used to do it. So what we're now, where we are now in our relationship in Kink, that if we co-dom, there's very, very few words. It's all done by looks and touch and watching each other's body language.
It sounds like
as well as a submissive, of course, because we're both. One of us is always constantly monitoring them as well.
Of course, yeah. It sounds like you've created almost a non-verbal language between the two of you. That's really special. So as part of our conversation today, I asked you to bring along something that you'd like to share, such as a quote or a book or movie, something that's influenced your sexuality. Can you share with us what you've brought along today?
Yeah, I've got a quote, and it's actually from Harvey Fierstein, that amazing, funny American gay actor.
Okay.
And this quote's look, it's said that he said it, and I'd like to go with that because I actually like him. So I'm hoping that he did say it. But it was actually, accept no one's definition of your life, define yourself.
That's powerful. What does that mean for you?
So, well, I like living my life. I don't feel that I have to continually justify my beliefs, my sexuality to others. And even though, in fact, I define myself as Marc. I know that sounds a bit twee, but Marc. I don't call myself Domme or bisexual. Marc is made up from all these different little aspects in my life. So that's how I define myself. And I don't like others saying to me, well, we know what you are. No, you don't.
Yep.
And I think if people take that on board, don't label yourself. Don't take other people's labels on board. You be you, because you'll be much happier.
Yeah, 100%. And we're all so complex and so different. It's really important to work out who you are and what is authentically you, especially in terms of your sexuality. It's such a core part of who we are.
And that's a problem because so many people push it right down inside them. It's like, you keep pushing it down because, oh my goodness, what will people think? if I were to find out. And, if we continue to keep pushing it down because we're worried about how people are going to define you and label you, we're not going to progress at all, because we'll always be pushing it down. So, yeah, you be you, accept no one's definition of your life, define yourself.
Beautifully said. I'd love to hear more about the 24/7 dynamic that you mentioned in your form, about the 24/7 dynamic that you had with a slave for over a year. What was that like for you, and what were some key lessons that you learned from that experience?
Yeah, it was when I was living in Sydney. And this was funny. So this is before the internet and all that. So This is when, there was little ads in papers and, some of the seedy little black and white magazines that used to get at the, under the counter. God, I'm showing my age up. But anyway.
And experience.
It was one of, but the interesting thing was for that, when I was in a member of a house and there was a young couple that wanted to join, and the reasoning was that he had told the head of the house at the time that she was very submissive and he wanted to dom her. So that's why they were interested in the scene and all that. And they'd been looking for nearly 12 months they'd gone to these little pubs and back bars until they met the right people. The interesting thing, I was asked if I would consider assisting by showing him, the basics, the 101 of being a dominant male back then. What it turned out to be that he ended up being more submissive than she was, and she wanted to actually get him to serve her and me, and that's how we started that dynamic. So basically, they were at my beck and call. I had a little flat at Bondi. They stayed with me. They'd done all the washing. They had jobs as well, believe me, but they made sure they looked after me first. And then when I came home from work, dinner would be waiting for me, and one of them had massaged my feet. And I thought, wow, this is pretty damn good. What I learnt out of it, that it's good for a short period of time, but you really got to take on board that if you've got a slave 24/7, they have committed their life to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a responsibility to nurture them, look after them, guide them. Doesn't sound too hard, but when you get, a phone call in the office to say, "Oh, sir, what colour panties should I wear today?" Or what outfit would you like me in for when you get home? Between being busy at work and having other responsibilities, the responsibilities of having these two people totally reliant on me started to burn me out.
Mm.
So whilst it all sounds fantastic, and some people want to be slaves and some people want to be masters, so the old thing that not all doms are masters, but all masters have been doms. So that's a good one to remember. So having that responsibility 24/7 ends up burning you out, and then you start to lose, I suppose, the grip of what and who you are to these people. So after about 12 months, in the end, certainly for the first several months, it worked extremely well because we were still learning each other and they were learning their new place in their world. because remember, it was not just mine. They were a couple. So their world was actually changing and the dynamics were changing. But the last few months was really, really hard.
Mm.
But the good thing was that we ended up having dinner, and they actually, instead of being on the floor, I actually got them to sit at the table with me, and we had this really deep discussion about the future. And it was quite an amicable agreement at the end that we would actually formally stop the dynamic we were in. And not long after, she became a full Dom and had several subs, including her husband. So something worked.
Well, I'm glad it was all resolved in the end. And yeah, your story highlights how important communication is between everyone. Now,
I think for a whole, yeah.
Continue.
I was about to say, I think that the whole scene, no matter what you're doing, and it could be swinging or it could be anything else, is communication.
100%.
It's got to be clear. It's got to be easily understood.
Mm-hmm.
And you've really got to listen to the other person and hear what they're saying, because the problem is that we get impatient and sometimes we miss some really important things that they're saying, and we just put them in our own basket saying, oh, they all agreed, when in fact they didn't. So I think having that connection and really listening to someone is really important. But again, you've got to be really clear about what your expectations are.
That's great advice. Thank you. We also have a tradition on the podcast where I ask you a question that's been sent in from a listener. And today's listener question is, what's a moment in your erotic journey that has surprised you? Something you didn't expect to resonate so deeply?
Oh, wow.
Good one.
That is a good one, isn't it? There's part of me that could answer this way, but I find every new partner surprises me. And part of that is because everyone's unique in what their needs and wants are. But there's nothing that jumps at me and goes, oh, wow, apart from the one that we discussed early on when we all went back to the flat and it all just happened. But I had experience not long ago where I was talking to a casual acquaintance, and then out of the blue they said to me, I think I've seen your profile. And I went, what? And then on this site called FitLife, I've seen your profile. And I said, oh, okay. I said, how did it make you feel when you saw my profile there? And so they ended up going into this explanation about they were really shocked and surprised. They never thought I was like that, but I found it very intriguing. And I think we end up speaking about kink in general for about 4 hours. Like, it was a very bit. The good thing that came out of that, which surprised me, that he admitted that he believed that he was actually submissive. And by the way, I don't want you to run away, but, I actually like guys. And I said, oh, so you're gay? No. I've got girlfriends. I said, so you're bisexual? Oh, yeah, does that matter? And I said, no, not at all. But I suppose it was something that happened pretty much over a beer. Didn't expect this person to be like this at all. That's not what we were there for originally. And then it was just something they said, oh, look, after after we were speaking and just the way you were talking and all that, I just felt comfortable that I could say to you, hey, I think I've seen your profile. And I think I came away from that quite surprised how warm and fuzzy I felt afterwards. It was actually a very positive and affirming discussion. it wasn't. Yeah, I don't know if they expect it was wild sex or something, but no, it wasn't. It was something that was a little bit more cerebral than that.
Lovely. So, considering you've been in the kink scene for so many years now and you love being a mentor to other kinksters, what else would you like to share with me and our listeners today about the erotic realm, Marc?
I think everybody's journey. What I've found is that everybody's journey is different, no matter what they identify as or what they feel they are, or are they pure holistic kinksters, or do they like mixing it up, or are they swingers, hedonists, sensualists, you name it. I think that everyone's journey is different. Some people will find it extremely easy to transition and grow and evolve, and others will find it a lot more difficult, purely because of how they feel they're going to be perceived by people not in the scene, if it was ever to come out. So what I think the exciting thing is sometimes you just got to take that deep breath and close your eyes and put one foot in front of the other and start your journey.
Yep, I very much agree. Very well said. Now, what's next for you, Marc? What's the next big adventure for you in terms of your erotic realm?
Oh dear. Part of me sometimes thinks, am I getting too old for this, and should I start winding it back? I just look forward to meeting new people. I'm really starting to go, a lot of people ask for my advice. So this is going to be really interesting. So I'm currently studying to be a counsellor.
Lovely.
I've had many years being at senior management positions and HR and IR and a whole range of things. So I'm formalising my qualifications. And what's exciting for me is I want to offer those sort of services to people in the kink scene, because it's not that easy to get for someone to listen to you unless they themselves are experienced in the scene. So from that side of thing, so I'm retiring from full-time work next year and going to start practicing. So, and I'm really excited about it because I feel that I've had all this experience and I've observed a lot. And, when I first started, it was very raw. It was full of drugs. It was, safe sex. And remember, I went through a whole period of the AIDS epidemic in Australia. So for people of my age group that were in, either in the kink scene or swinging or whatever, we went through quite a dangerous period at the time. And I think some of the bias towards gay men and bisexual men still stem from that period.
That makes sense.
In the community. So, we lived it, and, I remember originally in Sydney, people thought it was just like a cold. You worry too much, the whole concept of wearing condom, safe sex was pretty foreign to, especially in the gay scene. It was like, it's all too messy, I like raw. So, and then, of course, I lost quite a few friends from AIDS because they didn't take it seriously.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, these things happen. People, back then it was a bit of an unknown and it took a while for, if you like, the gay group to realise, hey, this is really serious. It's killing our friends. So, we've got to change. We've got to change our practices.
Well, you'll no doubt make a great counsellor for the kinky community, Marc. So I wish you well on that next adventure. That sounds really exciting. Now, a slightly more difficult question. Thinking about your journey and everything we have spoken about, if I was to ask you to sum up your sexuality in just one word, what would that word be?
in one word.
It's a hard one.
Curious.
Love it. Makes sense
because
to me.
I'm still curious. I'm still curious about people's decisions, why people do certain things, why people believe certain things. How come some people get off on pain and others don't? So that what drives me is that curiosity. I'm curious about people's sexuality and their preferences in kink, and because I hate people saying, I've done it for so long, what's there to learn? And hey, you learn every day, and you learn from every different person that you come in contact with, especially in kink. So if you can't actually keep learning, I think there's a problem there. Perhaps it's time to step back and just have a breather and a reboot and a reset.
Yep, I very much agree. Let's stay curious. And I think that's a great place to end this. So I'd like to thank you for being so open and sharing yourself with me and our listeners today, Marc.
Not a problem. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you again. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm podcast.